Alright, yan. Mga kabatas natin, mapapalaban tayo sa Englishan ngayon, no? Alam nyo naman, uh, what we have all been waiting for, finally, some sound advice and correct information from an expert. Ano, uh, I feel very honored, ladies and gentlemen, to have in our show today. I I don't know what to say. No, ang gagawin ko na lang, no. I'll introduce him and I'll let him say hi to you, ladies and gentlemen. The one I always talk to you about, the one that please subscribe to his channel, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Patrick Boyle. Please say hi to Patrick Boyle.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice. It's very exciting to be speaking to people so far away. So thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yeah. We have a lot of things, very important things at the moment in the Philippines that we will be talking about with Patrick Boyle, especially finance, right, and investing. And like many people requested, we'll be talking a lot about cryptocurrency and NFTs. But before we go there, okay, please, after this live stream, we have a link of the YouTube channel of Patrick Boyle. Please click that and subscribe if you haven't yet. All right, and please watch regularly his videos. It's very informative. I watch them regularly, honestly. So let's start, I guess, right? If you want, I will not, like, if you want a backgrounder or if you want to know who Patrick Boyle is, you can easily Google him. So we will not waste time. We will not waste time explaining who Patrick Boyle is because I've done that already many times. Okay, so let's start with the first question, if you'll allow us, Mr. Patrick Boyle. The number one question we have is, what is a Ponzi scheme? I've seen your video about the documentary with Charles Ponzi, and it's really, really very informative. Now, maybe for the people who haven't watched it yet or did not have enough time to watch the whole 1 hour plus video, can you please explain to us what is a Ponzi scheme?
Well, a Ponzi scheme is an idea. It's been around for a very long time, but a guy named Charles Ponzi sort of made it big, I guess, a little bit over 100 years ago in 1920 in the United States. But basically, the idea, it's a very funny sort of a strange kind of a con, because what happens is that the operator promises huge returns to investors. You know, they say I can make you a huge amount of money. I think Charles Ponzi was offering returns of 40 or 50% a year. And
Wow.
so people were very excited about this. And he actually had a good story as to how he could make this money. You know, it didn't sound as mad as such a return might sound. But basically what they do then is they collect the money. The money comes in, and then the early investors, when they come and ask for their money back, plus this high return, they're able to pay it out simply because more money is coming in than is going out. And so
Yeah.
they're basically, it's almost the strangest kind of a con, because, you know, with a normal con, you would kind of think that they would take all the money and run away with it. But instead, they
Yes.
end up taking money from one person and giving it to another. And it's even kind of what made the Ponzi documentary sort of interesting, is the idea, like, you wonder what's going on in this person's head, because I guess they just like the idea of being an important person, has been viewed as kind of a financial wizard.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
Charles Ponzi kind of did this on a scale that sort of gave this con his name. But then, of course, around, I don't know, 90 years later, Bernie Madoff came out and did it on the largest scale that we've ever seen, $60 billion, you know, and he got
Wow.
away with it for years. You know, there's some books that say that he was basically running a Ponzi scheme from the very start. And he got away with it because he, once again, he kind of layered on maybe more financial credentials. You know, he looked much more respectable. But on top of that, he promised people a return of around 12% a year. So that's sort of 1% a month. And that didn't raise as many red flags as Charles Ponzi would have. But of course, the thing that was unusual about it was that Bernie Madoff was making this sort of much larger return than would be expected. Not way larger. You know, the S&P, like if you invested in the stock market, you might make around 10%. Bernie was offering
Okay.
you 12%, but
12%.
there were no fluctuations in Bernie Madoff's return. Every month you were up 1%. And so
Oh.
normally anyone who has invested for a while or anyone who's run a business or anything knows that returns don't come in that sort of very smooth stream. There's good and bad months, and that should be expected because when you're taking financial risk, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. So the red flag with Charles Ponzi was that the returns were way too large to be believable, while with Bernie Madoff, the returns were within the range of
Yeah.
acceptability, but
Yeah,
there didn't appear
if
to
I
be
may
risk.
butt in, here in the Philippines, the legal interest is actually 12% per annum. So when you
Yeah.
were saying it was within the reasonable amount, yeah, it is really within it, but it's a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yes, yes. So and interestingly, both of those guys, they did nothing with the money, you know, because you would think like, did Bernie Madoff take in this money and do something and it didn't work? And it's a very interesting thing that both of these people were almost just paralyzed by the money came in and they didn't really know what to do with it, you know, and they just sat it in a big pile and they promoted and they did what they did, but never, you know, the good thing about that, I suppose, is that when the schemes eventually were wound up, um, a lot of people kind of got a lot of their money back. They didn't get all their money back because, you know, some of it went. But, you know, I don't know, it's kind of a fascinating thing that someone would choose to do that. You know, it's a bizarre decision to make to want to run a scheme like that.
Yeah. Well, now, because here in the Philippines also there are a lot of pyramid schemes, and it is being confused with a Ponzi scheme. When I watched your video about Charles Ponzi, I saw you also differentiated both of them. So, like, can you please again reiterate what's the difference, or how is a Ponzi scheme different from a pyramid scheme?
Well, a Ponzi scheme is often sort of one person running it, just as I described. With a pyramid scheme, there's usually one person at the top and they recruit a few people who recruit. So there's layers and layers of recruiting. And the biggest giveaway that something is a pyramid scheme is just that almost everyone involved is more worried about recruiting than they are with selling an actual
Yeah.
product. There's often a product involved, you know, it can be anything. You know, you see these all over the world. You know, it could be selling, I don't know, makeup or something like that. But you should always be wary if someone is more concerned with trying to get you to sign up to sell
Yeah.
makeup rather than trying to get you to buy it from them, you
Buy
know?
it. Yeah.
And that way, a pyramid scheme in a funny way makes more sense for the organizer because at least the money works its way up to the organizer. And in many ways, it
Oh.
looks like a more legitimate business. But of course, there's almost a standard sort of payout formula to a pyramid scheme where one or two people do appear to make a lot of money. And of course, they'll tell you about those one or two people. They're the one or two either at the top or near the top, but the rest all the way down are making nothing. Now, the other problem with a pyramid scheme is just the very nature of the pyramid means that as you go down the layers, there's more and more people. And the problem with that is that you know, people don't really understand the way that compounds out. But very quickly, like if people actually were able to recruit at the rate that they're supposed to recruit within a pyramid scheme, you'd quickly exceed the population of the planet, you know, after
Yeah.
a certain number of layers. And so even if you got into a pyramid scheme, knowing it was a pyramid scheme and just thought, well, I'll be able to recruit 7 people who will each be able to recruit 7 people and so on. The problem is that even that plan is deeply flawed, because with all the other people out there doing it, you're going to run out of recruits very quickly. And pyramid schemes are. There's actually a channel that I would recommend to your audience, all about kind of scams and
Yes,
con
please.
artists. There's a guy named CoffeeZilla who has a really good channel. And he had a really good, he interviewed a guy, I won't say his name, but who runs what I would consider an insurance selling version of a pyramid scheme. And that guy actually publishes the payouts that people get. And of course, you can see, we'll say about 4 or 5 people make, he tells you can make $100,000, $200,000 a year. And sure enough, around 4 or 5 people make that. But then when you move down the layers, you find that, we'll say 90% of the people in there are making less than $1 a day kind of thing. Like it's not even subsistence wages,
Yeah.
And the really, one of the things I sort of said this to you a moment ago offline, but there's a few things that you might look at a pyramid scheme and say, oh, it's not so bad. All you're doing is maybe wasting people's time, right? Because they're sort of trying to create a business and not really getting any traction with it. And that doesn't sound like the most evil thing in the world. But there's a few problems with that. One, you are wasting people's time, and often, your time can be converted into very valuable things. You can educate yourself in your spare time, or you can build a real business, with your time, or you can work in your time, and all of these things will, hopefully there's sort of seeds you can plant that will improve your life. And so you're taking that sort of valuable time away from people. But on top of that, you're also maybe breaking them a little bit, because when someone gets involved in a business that, let's be truthful, has almost no chance of ever succeeding. Like if sort of 1 in 1,000 people succeeds, it's a lottery ticket, right? And it's not even a lottery ticket. At least you just buy the ticket. You don't spend all your time on it.
That's it.
And so, you kind of involve yourself in a business that, we'll say, just has no chance of succeeding, and then when you fail, as you should expect to, it almost breaks you. You think, well, I'm a fool, I'm a bad business person, I don't, and this is all. This might prevent you from actually, maybe you are a smart person and you are capable at running a business. You just ran a business that could not win. And there's something a little bit evil about doing that to a person, that you not only waste their time, but also sort of take away from them a certain amount of dignity and self-confidence.
Great explanation. Great. Well, sorry to ask you this, but what do you think is worse? Like, with everything you said, a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme? Like, its effect on the people and on the finances of people?
Well, I think they're both probably equally financially destructive, because often we'll say, for example, even with a pyramid scheme, there's a big one a while ago, I think it's still around, that required people to buy vitamins, buy and sell health products, right? And the problem is, of course, that they get you to buy a huge amount of vitamins on the idea that you'll eventually sell them. And of course, then you just end up with them, past their expiration date in
a lot of vitamins
in your house. And, so that drains your money from you. But then on top of it, I actually think maybe at least a Ponzi scheme doesn't also take up all of your time. And I've worked with people actually who've fallen for these pyramid schemes, and they'll have a good job, and then they spend all of their evening and even some of their time during their good job doing this sort of making effort without moving forward. And in many ways, it also, apart from it takes money from them and other things, it also possibly decreases their work performance, because if you think about
Yeah.
it, they have a job that actually is paying them, and then they have one that is costing them money. But the one that's paying them, it sort of looks like a level pay. You know, you're going to earn what you're going to earn. While the other one looks like
Mm.
sort of an acorn that could grow into an oak tree. Of course, it will
Yeah.
not. You know, it's a dead seed, but it gives them this. You know, they focus all of their energy on the wrong thing, and that's very harmful to. Also, I think people lose all of their friends. Like if every
Yeah.
time I spoke to you, you tried to sell me vitamins or something like that, you know, when the phone rang, I'd stop answering.
Yeah. Answer. Yeah. You know, here in the Philippines, it became very like pyramid schemes became popular. Actually, it's still popular right now. And we have a term here because we are now in the social media world, right? So they send you a personal message or a direct message saying, "Let's get coffee." So a person whom you knew your crush before or someone who you knew before who never contacted you messages you and asks you to get coffee with him or with her, then it's a red flag. It's like it became like very famous here in the Philippines because that was their like introduction. Like,
Yeah,
hey, how are you? Let's get coffee. It's like you go with them and get coffee and they sell you stuff.
yeah.
Anyway, let's proceed to the next question. Multi-level marketing facts. Like here in the Philippines, multi-level per se, or as it is not illegal. So
Yeah.
how about in the United States or in Europe? Is it illegal?
You know, there are versions that are illegal, like where it's really obvious what's going on, but there are big multi-level marketing firms that, you know, I think there's one called Amway, there's another called Herbalife,
Mm-hmm.
where they seem to be able to comply with the law. So, you know, I would argue that they are probably not good businesses for a person to get into. I wouldn't want to
Mm.
be sued by saying much other than that. But you know, the interesting thing is that many of these businesses, they're sort of able to they work out ways of
Yeah.
complying with the law. But you know, I would argue that they aren't really providing you know, the people who get involved in them with a very good opportunity. So
Yeah, it still is not a very good opportunity, but it's not illegal. It's not outright illegal,
yeah.
right? As it is. So yeah, well, the same thing here. I just want to hear that actually. Now, let's move on to the second set of questions. Now, let's tackle cryptocurrencies. I saw your video, and to the people who haven't watched yet, please go to Patrick Boyle's channel and watch the video about China banning cryptocurrencies. Now, because they banned cryptocurrencies, well, let's ask Patrick Boyle what are the advantages and disadvantages of banning cryptocurrencies in the country? Like, for example, in China. Oops.
Well, for China, there's a list of reasons. You know, it's kind of an interesting. I'm neither for or against cryptocurrencies. They're just sort of a thing that's out there. But you know, for China, it possibly makes sense. You know, all over the news over the last few days, there've been, you know, there's news about the power outages in China. You know, that they have factories that are not getting enough electricity and ports that are not running because of the lack of power and so on. And you know, cryptocurrencies do use an awful lot of power. So one of the reasons, like even if you think that cryptocurrencies are a great idea, you know, it does make sense from a government perspective that if you have businesses that are making goods and selling them to the world, that you would want to prioritize sending electricity to them rather than to sort of a mining rig that doesn't necessarily appear to do an awful lot. So you know, China is a centrally planned economy. That's just the way it is. And, you know, whether you like that or not, that's what it is. And so, you know,
Mm.
the government likes to have an awful lot of control over what happens in the economy. And so once again, you know, when people can do these other things, it's outside of the control of the government, and they don't like that. So there's a bunch of reasons why, if President Xi would decide to do this. Now, another reason that globally, regulators are concerned with cryptocurrencies. One is just the fact that we'll say with the traditional financial system, if you were to send money around the world, it's one of these things that's very frustrating for a lot of people. You send money to a
Yes.
relative in another country or something like that,
Yeah.
and so much of it gets eaten up in sort
Yeah.
of an
It's very
inappropriate
costly.
exchange rate, and it's very annoying. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a few reasons for that. One of them is actually just inefficiency, which is something that hopefully will get washed out over time. But another big part of that is just that there's all sorts of rules in place, the government regulations that probably make sense for most of us. Things like anti-money laundering rules that basically make sure that when I'm moving money from one place to another, that it is my money to move, that it's not stolen,
Yes.
or that it's not the returns of an illegal business like drug dealing or something like that. And so the governments have all of these rules in place that work through banks and other financial intermediaries to prevent sort of things like terrorist
Yeah.
funding, criminal money, all sorts of things like that being moved around the world. Now, as soon as cryptocurrencies appeared, they were actually getting pretty good at those rules. In fact, they were maybe getting a bit too good at the rules. In yesterday's video, I pointed out that Boris Johnson, who is the UK Prime Minister, got in trouble a few years ago because he was actually born in New York. And so the IRS had
Yeah.
brought in these new rules, and they worked out that he had sold a house in London. With a capital gain, and so they hit him with capital gains tax as a U.S. citizen. Of course,
Yes,
he was
she is.
only a
Yeah.
baby in the United States. He's pretty British at this point, but he got taxed on that. So they'd gotten very good at sort of tracking money around the world and making sure
Yeah.
that people were kind of paying their taxes and that criminals weren't moving money. And then all of a sudden, all these cryptocurrencies appeared, and they allow people to move money with
Yeah.
absolutely no checks. Now, once again, whether you care about these checks or not, that's your personal decision. But you do have to understand that governments are worried when they put in place all of these rules, that these rules essentially don't work in a world with cryptocurrencies. And so
Yeah.
China banned for one reason, but when you see all of the other countries looking at these things and asking questions, they're often tied to things like money laundering, know your customer, all that sort of thing. Other reasons that countries are worried a little bit about cryptocurrencies is just there's an awful lot of scams that occur in the world of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And actually, it's kind of interesting here on YouTube. You'll see some very big influencers who, it sort of surprises me because I get the impression that they're quite wealthy people to begin with. They'll show you all their
Yeah.
fancy cars and things like that, but then they're trying to rip off their audiences.
Yeah.
I don't actually follow the world of gaming, but once again, that guy CoffeeZilla, he did a big video there a month or two ago on a group of kind of quite famous kind of video game influencers who basically would issue these tokens. And not only that, they claimed that the
Yeah.
money was going to a charity. And then what they did was, they just dumped the cryptocurrency and take all of the money. So all of their fans who, in truth had only bought these, put their money into this stuff because they like the influencer, and the influencer claimed it was a great idea, and they just basically took all of their money. And so, once again, like, it's the issue with cryptocurrencies is that they're decentralized. They're kind of not necessarily tied to one country. So it's a bit difficult for the regulation that's in place right now to catch all of these people. But of course, when big regulators like the Securities Exchange Commission or the FCA in the UK, when they look and see what financial frauds are happening, they're starting to see that an awful lot, if you're smart and running a financial fraud, you probably run it through cryptocurrencies rather than through,
Yeah.
the sort of traditional financial system where the money can be tracked and traced, And so even though probably 99.9% of the people in the world of crypto are just they're there for other reasons. There are some really nasty people in there, and it is unregulated. It's the Wild West in terms of regulation. And so if you're used to traditional investments and the sort of protections that are in place with financial regulators and so on, you'll make a mistake in the world of crypto by not realizing that there's absolutely nothing there to protect you. Like if you have your money stolen, there's pretty much no recourse. It's very difficult to even work out who stole your money or how they did it. So
Yeah, so now that you've touched on games, here in the Philippines, play to earn games are very, very rampant. There's a lot of play to earn games now, and like you said, people like the developers of these games, they ask people to buy NFTs or
yeah.
cryptocurrencies on a pre-sale. Then because because it is cryptocurrency, eventually it has people will buy it at a low price. So during pre-sale, many Filipinos would want to go in first, so buy it. Then eventually, if the game launches and it goes public, then the cryptocurrency will rise in value. So they think that if they can buy low, eventually they will sell high. They will be earning money. Actually, lots of money. Just like what I told you earlier. Like there is a game called AXIE Infinity here in the Philippines. Have you heard about it?
I've heard of it from your channel, and I Googled it a little bit last night. And in truth, the thing is, I don't really know an awful lot about video games. So I kind of read a little. Actually, I was surprised. It seemed to me an article I read last night said that even to get going in this game now costs around $600, which seems, rather expensive for something like that. But
Yeah. Yeah, actually not 600, about a thousand. No, about actually $2,000.
oh, I
A
guess I read an
thousand to
old
2,000.
article.
Yeah, $1,000 to $2,000 just to get in the game. Maybe you were talking about one character in the game. One character in the game is about 600, and
Okay.
you have to get three characters in the game to play.
Okay.
So you have to spend about $1,000 to $2,000 to get a good team, so you can play in the game. And while you play the game, you earn they call it SLP or Smooth Love Potion. It's token. It's in cryptocurrency, and you can exchange it for real money, for pesos. And here in the Philippines, big media companies advertised it, telling people that many students, many people who didn't have a job before, earned a lot of money from it, like millions of pesos. They got houses in just a month or 2 months. They bought cars, not only one, but two, three, four cars. Uh, Basing on those facts alone, do you think these play to earn games are really uh, sustainable? Or
I mean, in truth, when I look at it, and as I say, I don't understand much about it, but it looks like a lottery more than anything else, right? Like but a very expensive lottery, in that a traditional lottery, someone spends around $1 to buy a ticket, and then there's a potential windfall. While with this, it's you're spending quite a lot of money, but there's no reason to think it's a bit, it's the mistake people make looking at a lottery, and they kind of go, oh, well, my neighbor won the lottery and he bought a new car, so I
Mhm.
should buy a ticket. And it's like, well, your ticket does have a 1 in 1,000 chance of winning. So odds are that and even then you're not going to win enough to buy a car, right? And so,
Yeah.
you put your money into this thing, and it's just a lottery, and I got the feeling, that the company, I guess people buy and sell these characters a lot, and they charge like a 5%
Mhm.
transaction fee.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that the company themselves probably make money off of the transaction fees,
Yeah.
and then the players sort of make money if the game gets more popular and lose money if the game gets less popular.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not an investment, right? Like, if you want to do this, if you find the game fun, and if you have the money to lose, it's kind of like you can go to a casino, you can play poker. That's probably not an investment, right? Like, it's something that you might do in order to possibly gain and possibly lose money, but it shouldn't it shouldn't take the place of a place to put your savings that is likely to grow, and it equally should definitely not take the place of a job, where in the long run, the truth is that wealth comes from sort of creating things, creating value, and the more value you can create in the world, usually the greater wealth you can accumulate, and so anything that sort of doesn't involve, if you can't see how someone else benefits from your effort and transfers you money as sort of a way of thanking you for your effort, you probably shouldn't really expect to make an awful lot of money.
Well, in this game, actually, like the money that the money that people get paid from comes all I don't know, like you said, it's not investing, but these people who advertise this game call it investing or call it as an investment. And when people come in, the money that people got paid from when they earn money from the game is from the money that also other people put inside the game.
So it's got that
in
sort of multi-level marketing angle to it as well, then.
yeah, yeah, actually, it's I categorized it when I studied it. I categorized it more of a Ponzi scheme, because it's like these people, like influencers and the developers, they promote this particular game, saying that you will like have the return of investment in a month. If you Google in YouTube, you Google if you search in YouTube, if you search in YouTube Axie Infinity, they will like everything that will come out is about how they earned money this fast and how
Actually,
much
I
they
did that
invest.
last night. Like, I did a quick search just because I knew we would talk about it. And actually, straight away, the thing that is funny about it, like if you Google a regular video game, like one of the big ones that people play, you'll probably come across a bunch of videos showing people playing it or having people discuss what they like about it, or even like, techniques. Well, every
Yeah,
single video, like all the way down, I wasn't able to work out really what the game was, because every video was
exactly.
about how you'd make money rather than about the game. And that's a bit of a funny thing. Like, that should be a red flag to begin with, that people aren't playing this as it's not something they enjoy. If you Google
Yeah.
football, for example, you'll find
Yes.
people either explaining it or talking about how they enjoy it, while you Google this and it's all about how you'll make money. It's a bit of it's possibly a red flag, I would argue.
So, like, just to cap off the discussion about Axie Infinity, will you recommend, based on your experience and as an expert in finance, will you recommend people, especially Filipinos in a third world country, to spend like 1,000 to 1,000 to $2,000 in playing this particular game?
I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. I guess if you're very wealthy, if you're a multimillionaire and you decide that this would be a fun thing to do with your time, and you were gonna spend it on I don't know, a bottle of wine or something like that, and you decide instead to put that money into a video game. It's your money, spend it as you will. But I wouldn't say, like, if your idea is that you'll make money out of something like this, it's not really reasonable to expect that, like a game is a game. It's usually not a sort of a profit opportunity. I
Yeah.
wouldn't think. In fact, I can't think of a single game that is a profit opportunity throughout the history of games,
Yeah.
right? Like, because even
Yeah,
even
it's too good
gambling,
to be true, right?
right? Like, it's not a way of making money, because why would someone else give you their money to do something like this? It's best case scenario. It's kind of like a gambling game where money gets transferred between people depending on luck or skill. But it's not a real way to make money. No.
It's not, yeah. The sad thing about here in the Filipinos now is like they promote it as a way of making a living. So people are resigning from work. People are like selling their stuff to get into the game because like what you saw in YouTube, like people say that you can earn a lot of money from this one. It's like this is their savior. So that is why I'm so much against this game. I campaigned so much against this game, and
Hmm.
I got a lot of hate
Yeah.
because I told them don't go into this game because this game really is too good to be true. You cannot earn a lot of money from it. Only some people earn money from it, but that's why
Yeah, well,
it's
that's the
really a
thing. It's
pleasure you're
kind
here.
once again, it's kind of like a lottery, right? Because when you say, like, this isn't a good way of making money, people go, well, my neighbor, my neighbor won the lottery and he bought a car, and you say, yeah, but for that one person did that, there's 1,000 other ticket and got nothing, and so a lottery wouldn't work if everyone won, right? Because enough money doesn't come in for everyone to win. And similarly, a game like this, like, unless the sort of game organizer is Bill Gates, and he's chosen this as a way of spreading out his wealth, like, I mean, the
Yeah,
truth is that within a system like this, a certain amount of money comes in, and more money can't go out than came in. So best case scenario, like, there's no way of looking at it other than mathematically. Your best case scenario is that you take someone else's money, but everyone won't win. And you see this a lot in sort of bad investment schemes. And even I see this a lot in the
yeah,
world of crypto, where there's sort of this idea that we'll all stick together and we'll all win, and it's like everyone can't win in a system like that, because
yeah.
unless there's one person putting in more money than is and once again, still we have a thing where there's a big loser, the person who put in the money and didn't win. So
Like imagine betting in a lottery and you will bet 1,000 to $2,000. That's a lot of
yeah,
money. It's
it
a lot of
is, it
money to
is.
lose.
And the
And
bad thing is, once
yeah,
again, I think some of these things like lotteries, or some of the, like, multi-level marketing and things like that, in a way, they sort of target people who have less money, and and they sort of, not only do they they take your money, but they also sort of crush your dreams, and maybe
yeah,
maybe in a year or two, that person would have a real opportunity that would be and provide them the chance to earn a good living, and they've either already spent their money, so can't do that, or their sort of spirit has been crushed, and they no longer have the confidence to do anything going forward.
yeah. The sad part also is many influencers here, like finance gurus here in the Philippines, like the big ones, uh, encourage people to like invest in play to earn games like Axie Infinity. That's why it became
A,
really
a funny
popular.
thing that I'd have to say to people who watch YouTube and aren't on YouTube, one of the strange things, because I'm sort of teach at a university, and my channel is sort of a spin-off of my teaching, and it's sort of, I just put up stuff that I find interesting and fun mostly, but over probably around the time I hit around 100,000 subscribers, I suddenly started getting a flow of emails, and you're
Mm,
asked to promote all sorts of things like that are inappropriate and not good for your audience, and for me, I don't really have an urge to do that. Like in truth, like I've done a couple of ads on YouTube, and their products I think are respectable. They're things like newsletters and so on. They're actually free to sign up for, but the majority of the emails I get are kind of to promote bad products or to promote cryptocurrencies. There's a friend of mine who runs a YouTube channel and got asked to promote a given stock, like in a pump and dump scheme.
Yeah.
And when you run a YouTube channel, you see this flow of kind of emails asking you to do sort of inappropriate and potentially illegal things. And you then look at like who is on YouTube, and often like the big YouTube influencers are sort of 17-year-old kids, and like when I receive an email like this, I kind of go, there's no way I would promote that to my audience. Like, it's awful. And I imagine you get the same emails. But
I get the
if
same
you're a
emails.
16-year-old kid and someone says, I'll give you $1,000 if you tell everyone to buy this stock or to invest in this crypto
Yeah.
or to play this game, they're
Yeah.
going to tell you this. But then when you watch YouTube, watch it with that in mind. Like, there's no one, it's very rare that there's someone telling you to, in particular, to invest your money in something. It's very rare that they're telling you that without having been paid. And once you're
Yes.
aware that they've
Correct.
been paid, make your decision based upon that information.
The funny thing is, my channel is about law. And because I tackled NFT games so much, many NFT games companies email me now, like asking me to promote them. When in fact, I'm against this
Well, it's
play to
funny
earn
because they
game.
just don't watch your channel, like, and they'll send you a thing. Oh, I love your videos. Would you do this?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you watched any of my videos, you'd know that I will not do that.
Yeah, I'm against your games, and they're asking me to promote their games.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's
But
let's
once
move on.
again,
Thank you,
like
thank you for that.
the
Sorry.
problem is that the audience at home, like when people, the reason, like influencer marketing, this is what they call it, influencer marketing. It
Mm,
does work well because when people watch your channel, they probably sign in once a week. They watch your channel, they like you, they kind of think of you as a friend. And then when you say, "Oh, there's this great game that I've been playing," or this great thing, or "Oh, even like a garbage product, you kind of go, "Oh, I just bought this watch, that cost $100, and I really love it.
mm,
Here's a link, don't forget to put in my discount code." And they don't
yeah.
realize that, they'll go and buy this $100 watch. A $10 watch will arrive in the post that breaks a week later, and that person has been paid, will say, probably like 10%, right? They probably earned $10 to sell you that watch. And so,
Mm,
you know, the truth is that these people on the internet, they're not your friends. They don't know you. Like, in truth, like I put out
exactly.
my videos and I've got, like, I don't know, over 100,000 viewers. I've really never met any of them. Like, I go about
Yeah.
no one has ever come up to me and said they watch my videos. And so for a lot of these these influencers, I'm not even going to attribute nastiness to them. They don't even know the people out there, and they
Exactly.
probably think, well,
Exactly.
oh, it's just like an ad on the TV. But it works better than a TV ad because everyone has, by now we've all gotten used to, you see an ad on the TV and they say, oh, this is the most amazing thing. If you're an 80-year-old woman and you put this on your face, you'll look 25, and people kind of go, that probably won't work. But a week later, Kim Kardashian will come out and tell you to buy some
Yeah.
cream, and suddenly, it's sold off of the shelves, right? And so, just when you're watching YouTube, or if you're on Instagram or any of these other social platforms, do be aware that, like, when someone is pushing a product, it's very rare that they do it without being paid to do so. And in particular, these
Yes.
kind of young, well-to-do influencers, like it's their core business is pushing this stuff.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I've been saying that many times to people, and still they won't believe me. It's like they didn't like show evidence. They want me to show evidence
I
that they
mean,
were
your
paid.
email will be full of it. You'll have, this morning, I bet I got 5 emails this morning asking me to promote, like one of them was to promote a toothbrush, and it's like, I teach finance, chums. I'm not going to brush my teeth on YouTube and tell
Yeah.
people it's a great toothbrush. But someone will.
Yeah, and the bad thing here in the Philippines also is with some of the influencers, they deny that they
Yeah,
got incentives, like for example, cryptocurrencies or actual money. They deny that so that people will think that, oh, this person is really telling us like a good investment. Like this is really a
yeah,
good investment. We should you should trust him. We should trust him. We should trust the developers. The funny thing also, when you said that you're not supposed to trust the people in YouTube, is many Filipinos trust the developers in play to earn games. Like they trust everything that they say, all their promises, even if their promises don't actually happen. Like when they say we will do this in a week, it didn't happen. They still trust them. So I
yeah,
always warn them, why would you do that? And they say, because these people showed their face in YouTube.
yeah.
So so they
It's
will
kind
trust
of
them because
wild, like, because even like some of the people who have promoted awful cryptos, like I look at them and think, like, you didn't need to do this either. Like, it'd be one thing, like, I almost understand if someone is impoverished and they kind of they can make a lot of money out of this, and you kind of go, well, it's the wrong thing to do, but I understand it. But some of these people, like, they're multimillionaires, and they'll they have an audience that really likes them, and they'll just
yeah.
hose them, they don't care at all. But
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's like the people really need like to hear that from an expert, because I don't know why they trust so much these people that they don't know. And
well,
they ask people for their money.
yeah, but it's a funny thing. It's actually it's not that surprising why people trust them, simply because there's almost that feeling that it's friends, that someone, because actually I even find it funny. Like, we'll say, for example, I watched a few of your videos before
Mm,
our call, and then immediately I get on the call and I feel I'm talking to someone who I know, even though
yeah.
I've never spoken to you live
Yeah,
before,
it's
but
the
they're just sort of.
familiarity, right?
Yeah, and so when people watch these people in particular, like some of them, the kind of daily vloggers or whatever, like they sort of feel they're part of their life. They've met the person's wife and kids and whatever, they feel they've met them, but
Yeah.
of course they haven't. So
Yeah. And if they can scam you easily because you trust them.
yeah, actually, it's kind of an interesting thing because I I sometimes I think the scammers are often ahead of real marketers, which is sort of an amazing thing. Like, because it amazes me, one of the kind of famous that I don't know if it's well known in the Philippines, the this guy Ty Lopez, who kind of did this video.
Yeah.
Here I am in my garage, and he's got the Lamborghini behind him, and he's of course
Yeah, yeah,
selling you some
I saw
get rich
that.
quick scheme. Um, but it's sort of amazing that the people like that, they sort of know where to go to get sort of cheap
Exactly.
advertising that's effective. And you would think, like, when you look at like, who are the biggest advertisers in the world? They're probably companies like Procter and Gamble and Coca-Cola, and the big advertisers. They don't advertise on YouTube at all. Like, it's kind of amazing, that, like, because it's much cheaper to advertise on
Yes.
YouTube. So in the old days, how scammers used to do it is you'd buy a magazine, and you'd leaf through the magazine, and towards the back, all the ads turn up, and there'd be an ad in there sort of saying, like, I can teach you how to make $1 million.
Yeah.
Send me a check for $20 to this address, and I'll send you a pamphlet. And that was the old version of those ads. And suddenly
Yeah.
now they're on YouTube, and so
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's move on to our next question. This one, cryptocurrency. Many people here in the Philippines say that cryptocurrency is the same with stocks. Can you please enlighten us?
Well, there's very big differences between cryptocurrency and stocks, because a cryptocurrency is, I guess, it is supposed to be a currency, and people who are big believers believe that it's the currency of the future. Now, that may or may not be true. It's very hard to say. But a stock is a very different thing. When you invest in a stock, like we'll name a big company like Coca-Cola or Microsoft or Apple Computer, someone like that. When you buy shares in that company, you own part of that company, right? Because, those companies, they were founded by someone and then they were eventually sold, and it's split up into a whole bunch of little pieces that we call shares. And when you buy them, you are a part owner of that company. And then as that company operates their business, they either, like Apple, they sell iPhones, or if it's Coca-Cola, they sell Coca-Cola, and they sort of buy in raw materials, sell something at a profit. Some money is left over, and that gets returned to the shareholders either through dividends, or if it's a non-dividend paying stock, it gets reinvested in the business to grow it bigger. And so when you invest in a stock, there is a productive enterprise there. It's kind of like if you were a part owner in your friend's shop or something like that. And there's no surprise. Like when you say, well, how do I make money in this? It's very easy. If the shop is successful, if they buy stuff cheap and sell it expensive, there's a profit and you get a share of that profit. And that's what you get when you invest in stocks. Now, there's also bonds, which are a loan to a company. So you basically take your money and you lend it to a company, and they agree, we'll say, to pay you a certain interest rate, and that is the return that you get. And so it's very clear with stocks and bonds where the money is coming from. It's coming from an operating company that is doing things. Now, with many other types of investment, once we move away from those kind of two key investments, we move into the world of things that they're sort of non-producing assets, so they're not actually there's no wealth generation, there's no machine there generating wealth like there is with a company. So you could compare things like cryptocurrencies to things like commodities, right? We could say, well, for example, you're able to invest in the value of orange juice, frozen concentrated orange juice futures. You could buy that. Now, the real question when you invest in commodities, will say like oil, you buy oil. Why would oil go up and down in price? It's really just a matter of supply and demand, And so you get into these things. But of course, the problem is that if oil goes up an awful lot in price, that means that the people who produce oil are incentivized to find more of it. They'll drill more oil will come out of the ground. And so when you look at the very long-term return of sort of non-producing assets, you tend not to see a very high return. And that includes not just things like commodities. It'll include things like art and collectibles. It'll include, it even will include real estate that's not rented out. Okay, so if you buy a house and you don't rent it out, you're holding it for it to increase in value. Often when you take all of the costs of doing that into account, you don't generate a very large return. So when we look at financial history, we have quite a bit of financial history that can be looked at, but really like good data for 100 years. And you'll usually see the stock market outperforming most other assets. And the reason it outperforms other assets is simply that there's a core business there. And so the money's not coming from nowhere. They're making a thing and selling it at a profit, and that profit is generating wealth. Most other assets tend to go a bit more sideways in the long run. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't periods when they go way up, but in the very long run, if there's no reason for that thing to really be generating wealth, it tends not to. And so I guess I would lump crypto, there's actually an interesting video I made when I think you made a video about it about a week ago, the video on collectibles. One of the things that I wanted to sort of look at with that, because I think a lot of people, when they say to me that they like the idea of investing in cryptocurrencies, they'll point at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the big one. And they say there's a capped number of Bitcoins. And so because Bitcoin is rare, it eventually has to become hugely valuable because everyone in the world will want to own Bitcoins. Now, firstly, we have to ask, will everyone in the world want to own Bitcoins? It's not obvious that that's true. I mean, it could be, but it's not obviously true. And the second thing, the real idea that people are pitching is that rarity equals high
Yeah.
value. But of course, there's
Value,
lots of
yeah.
stuff in the world that's rare, that's just not valuable. In fact, someone wrote a comment in my video's comment section, and they said a one-eyed horse is much rarer than a two-eyed horse, but no one's going to pay you more for it, and that's kind
Yeah,
of the
it's a
example.
good.
And so yes, don't always fall for the idea of rarity. Like rarity can be valuable, but it also has to involve people, like a certain specialness to the asset that people will really want. And so that's kind of where we sit with a lot of this stuff. And at the moment, a lot of these cryptocurrencies, they're very new. They've done very well. Like the kind of people who bought Bitcoin early on have made an awful lot of money out of it. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are you early to the party or are you too late to the party? Because
Yes.
a very similar thing, I have on my shelf over here my pets.com sock puppet. This is a piece of
Yeah.
memorabilia from the dot-com bubble. And I sort of started out my career in finance during the dot-com bubble. And we had this interesting thing. The dot-com bubble felt a lot like cryptocurrencies in that there was this new thing, right? There was the internet, which, 20 years ago, the internet was pretty basic, but it looked amazing. You looked at it, and anyone with any sense looked at it and said, this is going to be huge, right? It's just going to be huge. And sure enough, it is. In fact, it's probably bigger than we actually thought it would be. But the problem is that we looked at the companies that were early on the internet were given such huge valuations that they could never grow enough to reach those. And in many ways,
Yes.
they sort of blew through all of the money that came in. And so if you look at some of the really hot stocks in 1999, like one of the hottest stocks, and they're still around, is the company Yahoo, right? Like Yahoo
Yes.
was
Yes.
the Google of 1999. Like there was a
Yeah.
big search engine, right? And you
Everything was Yahoo.
yeah, I mean, who uses it? Like, it's still kicking around, but what is it even for anymore, And there's a lot of things like that. Like, even you could be right. Like, we'll say, for example, if the crypto people are right and they know that these things will be big. Another good example is BlackBerry. The first smartphone was a
Yes.
BlackBerry, and I had a BlackBerry and I thought it was great,
Me too.
And then one day the iPhone came out and was way better. BlackBerry's gone, like they're gone. And Nokia phones, they were the leader of mobile phones years ago.
No.
Everyone had a Nokia. They're gone. And so you could look at Bitcoin and say, well, Bitcoin is the market leader. And you're right. You're definitely right. They are. But the question is, are they the same as BlackBerry or Nokia or,
Yeah.
any of these, Yahoo? We don't know. We don't know that. And so whenever someone tells you that it's the guaranteed path to, there's no signposts on the guaranteed
Yeah.
path to riches,
Yeah, because they
And
say
so,
they always say it's the future. So you have to get into it because it's the
yeah,
future. That's what they always say.
it
That's how they
might be the
market it.
future, but that specific, the one you pick may not be, And
Yeah.
when we look at any financial history, like often the companies that were the real leaders, the Wright brothers, they got the first airplane up into the
Yeah.
sky, that was the future. They were the real leaders. Has anyone bought a plane from the Wright brothers in recent years? This is often the problem, is that I'm not trying to be really negative, but the problem is that you can be right about the future, but wrong about the companies or stocks or cryptocurrencies that you
Exactly.
pick.
Yeah.
And so it's never easy, And if anyone tells you that these things are easy, they're not telling you the truth. It's very, and often when people do really well, it's good luck, and people don't like to tell you that. You look at someone who, any business is a combination of being smart and good luck. And of course, when you do well, you have this huge urge to feel it's all because of stuff you did rather than right place, right time. But almost anyone
Yeah.
who has been successful will tell you, they may not put it on their YouTube channel, but they'll tell you in secret that, in fact, a great example of this is the story of Richard Branson, Richard Branson, the
Yeah,
famous
Richard Branson.
astronaut. And, Richard Branson started out a bunch of, music industry businesses. And basically,
Yeah.
the real way he was making money was that he was buying records, claiming that he was selling them abroad and getting the tax back from the government on them, and then he just sold them in England, And so he got away with this for a while. It was basically tax fraud, and the revenue authorities caught him, and they gave him, I think, about a year to pay this tax fine, otherwise he was going to go to prison. And he had this great luck because he had a record label, and there was a fellow called Mike Oldfield who was a multi-instrumentalist who used to do backing on a bunch of the tracks that Richard Branson was recording. And Mike Oldfield recorded the album Tubular Bells, which went on to be, I think, the best-selling instrumental album in history. Now, Richard Branson did listen to this album, and he said, that's fine, but you need a singer to sing over it, right? Which would have ruined the album, But anyhow, during this period where Richard Branson was in trouble for tax fraud, he had the lottery win of Mike Oldfield making one of the best-selling records in history in his record studio. And then it all goes on. And then he did a lot of other smart things, but, there's often this luck component in there. Like when you see some of these people who explode to the upside, it's not, they're often this huge business sense. And usually when people get very wealthy, they're usually very smart. Like you don't meet an awful lot of really dumb, wealthy people, but there's also a lot of awfully smart people who haven't done that well. And it's really that the very wealthy people combine intelligence with great fortune, and that's kind of the truth of it.
Yeah. That's a really good story. Yeah. Well, here people want to know: will you invest in cryptocurrency?
I don't invest in cryptocurrencies at the moment because in truth, I don't feel I understand enough about them, and I do. That doesn't mean I don't understand them at all. But when I look at them, there's no real way of valuing a cryptocurrency, right? Because with many financial assets, you value them based on sort of a cash flow associated with them, right?
Yeah.
But there's no cash flow associated with crypto assets. The other things like commodities, you would value them on a need for them, where you would look at them
Demand.
and you would say, well, this steel is valuable because it's needed for making buildings or all sorts of other things. There's not necessarily a need for cryptocurrencies either, or crypto assets. And so for me,
maybe trading drugs, selling
what
drugs.
I'm good at.
Cryptocurrency is good for doing illegal transactions.
Yeah, I mean, there's many, there's many arguments that can be made about them, but I'm just not convinced. I also think, one of the things that actually, I know someone who made an awful lot of money in cryptocurrencies, but they are in trouble at the moment for money laundering problems.
Yes.
And they didn't necessarily specifically do any money laundering, but the problem is that you find yourself, like if you're trading or dealing with people who are anonymous, you always run the risk of dealing with criminals. And in places like the United States, any sort of financial dealings with criminals can get you in trouble. And so, you run, there's many of these risks that are in that world that may not at first seem obvious to people. The day might come where I find these things more interesting, but even to a certain extent, I feel even I look at the kind of blockchain technology that all of this is based on. And I'd say for close to 10 years now, I've been hearing people tell me about the massive uses of blockchain, but I haven't yet seen it happen. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not like even with the internet, there were obvious uses, like really quickly, there were obvious uses for the internet, while other than sort of putting together cryptocurrencies. And some of the DeFi stuff is kind of interesting, but I think it's very susceptible to regulatory risk. I haven't yet seen like a really amazing, like after 10 years of development, there's not really an obvious huge use to the technology.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. It has not proven itself to be inevitable yet, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. It's already an hour, and I promised to just like have you for 1 hour. Let's have this one last question. Collecting NFTs, like, would you recommend it? Is it financially sound? You think?
Um, you know, we venture into sort of the art world with this, like where essentially like you could view NFTs as kind of conceptual art or whatever. There's a way of looking at it like that. But then I would say
Mm.
that like when I see some of the people involved in NFTs, they don't strike me as conceptual artists, like Logan Paul. I'm not sure that he's one of the great artists of our generation. Like he might be the new Andy Warhol, but
Yeah.
as someone not knowledgeable about the world of art, I question that he's the new up and coming artist. And so, when we look at a lot of NFTs, they once again will say if there is something useful in there, because there's a bunch of people who put forth that basically the concept of an NFT is sort of an unerasable kind of proof of ownership of a thing, like it's like a receipt, right? But like the problem I would have with that argument is that like we'll say here I have a camera, and I could give you a paper receipt that says that you own this camera,
Yes.
Now that's fine, but the problem with that is I could also give you an NFT that says you own that. But the problem is I could then take this camera, sell it to someone else, and buy a much worse camera and put it in the box, right? And the problem is
Exactly.
that the NFT itself might be unerasable, but it's not in any way connected to the product that it says that you own, So it's a very it's kind of a very strange conceptual thing. So there might be a day where someone like, there was kind of, there's in terms of art, there's the artist Damien Hirst, and he created, I think a number of paintings or something like that, because he's created them, they will have some value. And I think he then equally minted NFTs relating to them. And he
Yeah.
has told the buyers that at a certain date, he's either going to destroy the NFT or destroy the painting. Like you'll get one or the other, And that's kind of an interesting idea, and
Yeah.
who knows what people will choose, and who knows,
Yeah.
like that's kind of an idea from an artist, and that might be an interesting idea. It's very hard, like even when you look at art, it's very hard to say what the value is, because the value is
Yeah.
always, it's still driven by taste and by sort of almost by story and that kind of thing. And so we're able to look at, when I was researching my video on collectibles, I didn't actually include any of it, but I found a great New York Times article on really hot artists from the 1970s that kind of just totally fizzled. They were kind of the new young artists. They were very exciting. People were collecting their paintings, and then they were just sort of viewed as out of date. The 80s and the 90s came, and people said, oh, it's kind of tacky 70s art, and there's a lot of it, and da-da-da. And those guys are still out there. They're creating art, and you go to their websites or whatever, and you can see that that they are capable artists. But it's
Yes.
very difficult to kind of draw a line between the monetary value of something and its sort of cultural value, and art tries to do this, but I even feel like, you go to an art museum and you stand in front of a very famous painting, and as soon as you look at it and it's a $50 million painting, and that's a huge amount of money, and
Yeah.
it's almost difficult to see the
Yeah.
painting anymore, because all you can see is its value. And so
Yes.
in terms of like discussing like whether NFTs will have value or, you know, the value of art, like I don't really have any expertise on this. Like people from the art world might have more than I do. But once again, I would kind of say to someone, if you're going to spend a huge amount of money on a piece of art,
Mm.
you know, you should buy it because you like it, because there's a good chance, you know, most art that people buy, like if you go out and spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a painting and you then want to sell it, you'll probably find it's worth next to zero. Like it's unmarketable once you've bought it. And so you should really
Yeah.
just buy this thing because you like it. And I did a video, you know, I kind of used the example of Beanie Babies. And the thing is, if
Yes.
you really like these little stuffed bears, you know, happy days, you've got them, you know. But don't base your retirement account on these things, because there's no way of knowing in 10 to 20, 30 years time if
Yeah.
anyone will want these things at all, you know. And so buy it if you like it, but don't turn something that you enjoy into a financial asset. You know, make financial decisions with your money. And you know, you should view a lot of these sort of collectibles and decorative
Mm.
items as, you should view them as money that you've spent in order to make your life, you know, to decorate your, like you have a stack of guitars there behind you.
Yeah.
It's probably arguable that some of them are worth more than what you paid for them. But even if tomorrow you were told that each and every one of those is worth nothing, you're probably still
Yeah.
pretty happy to have them, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. I'll still
that
play
that
them.
is a decent investment for you,
Mm.
because you get to use and enjoy these things.
Yeah. Like going back to Axie Infinity, and you talked about decent investments. With Axie Infinity, they said they are selling NFTs. These are the Axies. And
Yeah.
you play with the Axies, and these are the NFTs that you pay for, like 1,000 to 50,000. Sorry, $1,000 to $2,000 per team. Now the problem with this one is when the game is no longer popular and it's not running anymore, you don't have access to your NFTs
Yeah,
anymore.
well,
And
that is the problem with a lot of stuff like this, is that it goes out of fashion and it disappears. Actually, to give you a good guitar example, actually, that's kind of interesting is, you know, if you wanted an effects pedal for your guitar, right? You
yeah,
can buy like a good distortion pedal, or you can get a little piece of software for your computer, right? That'll do roughly the same thing. That little bit of
mm,
software on your computer will be worth nothing in a year's time, simply because
exactly.
technology
Yeah,
will have moved on and your computer will be old and da, da, da. You know, these software-based things tend to move to zero very quickly, while actually a physical guitar pedal will kind of hold its value, because in 10 years' time, you can find a 50-year-old guitar pedal that do the same
yes,
thing today as it did 50 years ago. So, you know, one of the problems with sort of a software-based store of value like an NFT tied to a video game is just that over time people get sick of video games. You know, like the video games that were big 10, 20, 30 years ago, you know, no one plays them anymore, you know. And they it's, you could argue, oh well, it'll evolve into something that's always popular, but it's not. Like, it's even like people don't, I don't know, like people don't entertain themselves the same way today as they did years ago, and all
mm,
of this stuff will move on, and there's a very good chance. Like it's not. I can't think of a video game that was big, even, you know, a few years ago, that still is. Like they
yeah,
just move on, and people get tired of them, and you know, as people get, and you know what will make people tired of this, the fact that they have to put up $2,000 to even get going, like
yeah,
that. If you think about it, the people who, when that game got popular, I bet you had to put up very little money, right? So a load of people got in with
yes,
very little money. Now it costs 2,000. The pool of new people to sign up is much smaller at $2,000 ago than it was, we'll say, you know, a year ago, when it might have been, you know, $20 to get involved, right? And so, and as it grows, like, as it, we'll say, if in a year's time, we'll say if it goes well for you in a year's time, it's $20,000 to get involved. How many people are going to sign up for that? The pool is getting smaller the more expensive the sign up is. And so, the question you often have to ask yourself with things like this is, am I early to the game or late to the game? And when we look at the dot-com bubble, there were people who were early to the game and they did just fine. That was very few people. And by the time you turned on CNBC and saw people shouting about the best dot-com stocks, it was already over. And I worked, I dealt with brokerage clients at the time. And I remember in late 1999, you'd have all the older customers who knew nothing about this, and they had heard their nephew made a ton of money in Yahoo or whatever, and they would call up and they'd say, what kind of internet stock can I buy? And you'd say, maybe you don't need an internet stock, like it's very risky, it's and they go, no, I really need an internet stock. And it's like, by that point, like, it was done, like when and you have to ask yourself, are you so early to the game? Well, clearly you're not early enough. If you're buying at 2000, you're not the earliest person to the game. The question is, how late are you? Like, is the party over? Is someone about to turn the lights off and send you home?
Yeah, that's the problem with these games, right? It's just a matter of when they will turn the lights off. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Boyle. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank you. It's been a ton of fun talking to you.
Yeah, and our audience are very happy that you actually came here to our channel to explain a lot of things, like from you, actually.
Thank you.
And not from me interpreting what you were saying.
You're doing great work there. It's often a miserable thing to sort of be the person who says, when everyone looks like they're having fun, to kind of go, guys, this isn't very smart, but it's important, and I think hopefully you'll save a few people from making big mistakes. So it's good work.
I'm the party pooper. And you're saying it. Thank you so much, sir, there.
Okay, see you later, and thank you.
See you later. Thank you very much. And do you have any last words? Please subscribe to Mr. Patrick Boyle. The link is in the description. You will learn a lot, I promise.
Sure, we'll stay in touch as well. It's been a ton of fun.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. And someday we'll have you in our show again.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Mga kabatas natin, tulad ng lagi kong sinasabi, magpapaalam na ho ako. Matulog po tayo ng mahimbing dahil alam natin yung natutulog ng mahimbing, siya po yung laging panalo. Paalam po pansamantala.